Hello everybody. This week we're going to explore research design in business and management. And then the first recording is to give you an overview of a research design. To start with, what do we mean by research design? As the term design indicates, when you try to design something, you have to think about what you want to do and then how you want to do it, where you want to do it, and when would you like to finish, and what would need it for the design. Yeah, so the same as a research project. So for research design, it is about the overall plan of what you want to do for the research and how would you like to execute or conduct the research. So in order to answer the main research question. So therefore, research design is actually related to the overall process of the research. So from the very beginning, where you are now, defining a research topic or refining it into a smart research question, to operationalize it from the specific variables or objectives where you may need to be executed by some literature review, to the later on where you collect data for your research and analyze them, present them into the findings, discuss them and interpret them before you summarize and conclude your research. So research design exists in the whole process of your research. So now you need to start thinking about the overall process of your research. As you remember, we showed you the roadmap for your research project. Yeah, so the research design is really where you think about what exactly you want to do and how would you like to do it in each of these 10 steps. So for the purpose of this module and where we would like you to produce a proposal, it is only the first 8 or 7 steps would be needed, but you would also need to consider the 8, 9, 10. But you don't have to exactly do it. So the roadmap displayed above can be verbalized or textualized in this below process. So from the beginning where you formulate and decide on your research topic or research question, and then you start operationalize them from the specific variables or key terms, which can be achieved by some literature underpinning or theoretical underpinning from literature review, and then to what your research purpose and how you understand the philosophical underpinning in relation to the ontology, epistemology, and research paradigm of your research. So to now you are designing how would you formulate, or conduct or execute your research project. Yeah, so later on in the whole research process, you have to think about how would you access the data, what kind of data needed. Yeah, so how to collect the data and how to analyze them. So and then what to report. Okay, what is your conclusions and recommendations out of your research. So this is the whole process of your research, and I hope at where we are now is the design process before you move on to the next few stages we're going to talk about in the next few weeks. So it's vital for you now to start considering the specific research design. So this slide is also to highlight the research design and what research design involves. As we said, the overall plan for the project. Yeah, from the topic, hopefully you've already finalized or decided or in the process of to finalize it, and then to review the relevant literature which underpins your research, and then you understand the philosophical underpinning and the type of research you would need by justifying your position as a researcher and your understanding what reality is, how knowledge is created before you create or design your research to create knowledge. Yeah, and then you consider the access issues and then the data collection issues or data analysis issues. It's just another different way of illustrating what research design is, and with reference to the whole elements or the process of the research. Therefore, in this presentation, as part of the overview of a research design, and I hope you can revisit or review what's already done by now in the past 4 weeks. So first, ask yourself, have you formulated a smart research question? We discussed the SMART research question in the first teaching week. So your research topic must be specific firstly, yeah? So situated within a particular context and then focused on a particular academic subject. You may have also specified where, when, and with whom. And your research is measurable, achievable, and realistic, okay? So you don't do research with politicians or celebrities that might not be achievable or realistic for you as a postgraduate student, especially if you don't have the resources to reach out to them, okay? To access the resources. And also you need to make sure your topic is timing, is topical and timely, and you're able to complete it on time. So for example, we explained to you as an example the COVID-19 topic. It can be a very topical and interesting topic in various different concepts. Yeah. So for example, in relation to the academic subject of marketing strategies for online shopping nowadays, or could be for HR, work-life balance under the COVID-19 lockdown circumstances. So it can be very timely and topical now, but it may not necessarily be relevant anymore or timely anymore in 2 years' time by the time you finally progress to your final major research project. Okay, so all these SMART elements has to be considered before you finalize your research question. Secondly, in relation to the first question, your SMART research question, which we refer in a question format. Yeah, so start with W's, what, why, and H, how, for example. So do you understand what it is about? Yeah, are you going to look at why or how? So in relation to whether your research is going to explore something or describe or explain or evaluate or combination of many of them. So the purpose of your research is important, for you to consider the research design. If you want to explore a particular phenomenon, for example, or maybe describe the way how you design your research might be different because the in-depth or the approach to your research will be very different whether you want to do interviews or questionnaires. Okay, so it's important you understand what is the purpose of your research in relation to your research question. And then we talked about where once you have decided your research question, and then you may want to break it down into the key terms and then to formulate the specific research objectives. Yeah, so the key terms or specific research objectives, as I've mentioned, might lead to the next section of your research project, which is literature review. So literature review is the theoretical underpinning of your research. It is the opportunity for you to identify the relevant concepts or theories or viewpoints from different scholars, researchers, or different sources that is related to your research and what's already done by whom and what are the views there. But in the meantime, it is not simply a descriptive list of the papers or summaries as we mentioned. It is a coherent argument of the expert views which underpins your research, which is where we say critical literature review. So you have to be critical, you have to have your own voice, your own comments, so your own argument, lines of argument there, independent thought within this literature review. So that's why we say it's a critical literature review. So by now, I hope you have already identified some relevant literature. You have kind of positioned yourself and engaged within the literature and try to identify your own independent thoughts and then help you to justify the purpose of your research. And fourthly, you have to ask yourself, have you understood what we discussed last week about research philosophy? I know it's a very challenging concept, but in a way, if you look into this this slide, it's kind of quite easy to understand. It's kind of, whatever you do later on, especially whatever you want to design, how you design your research, is related to this philosophical underpinning, your assumption and your beliefs into what reality is and what is the your position as a researcher, with the research and the way how you want to create the knowledge out of your research. Yeah. So for example, mentioned under ontology, if you are objectivist and you believe into the existence of one reality, and that might lead to your positivist epistemology, where you think knowledge is gained through, facts, through observations, and can be measured by numbers and figures. So that leads to your methodology in the third box here. So probably more deductive, where from general to specific. So where you may, read literature, collect the data, and then, coming to a conclusion to justify or to test whatever other people's view is right or wrong. Yeah, and also that might lead to the fourth box, methods. So could be more likely to be quantitative. Yeah, so if you're objectivist ontology and that might lead to positivist epistemology, and deductive methodology and quantitative methods. All right. So on the other hand, if you are very subjectivist, so you think, there's no one reality, reality can be interpreted by social interaction. So in that case, your epistemology would be very interpretivist. So you may conduct your research by, interviews, speaking to people, within a particular social context. And that's very likely lead to your methodology as an inductive approach, where you may, after having observed something, you go to speak to people, as we looked in the example, yeah, and find out what that is, and then generate your own theory or concepts. So in a way, in terms of methods, it's very qualitative, because you go very in-depth into the way how you collect the data, and into understanding and measuring how, or investigating into what the social phenomena is under different circumstances. So they're all related and interrelated, and it's important for you to understand the link and the consistency between them. Therefore, the alignment, coherence of your research is the key in the whole research design process. Yeah, when you start planning your research, just think about whether there's any links or consistency between the purpose of your research. You want to explore something, for example, and then later, what have you found in the literature review? And so then later on, what is the philosophical underpinning you have already collected? Yeah. So, for example, if your research question is about how, the organizational change, for example, and the evaluative research, so how the whole organizational process has been conducted, and then later you collect some relevant literature, so for your background understanding, and then maybe if you're looking to how effective, so you probably will be speaking to the employees, see how they react to it, whether they're happy or not. Okay, so that means it's likely you are not a very objectivist, think there's only one reality, because different employees might have different views. It's very likely to be very subjective depending on the employee's position in the organization, the background they are from, the way how they are affected. So that might be aligned with the qualitative research you're going to conduct later on. Yeah, you speak to people and also linked to the interpretivist epistemology or paradigm that your research is going to do. So it's important, you have this consistency, from the very beginning, the purpose of your research, the kind of literature you probably collect, and the purpose of the literature, whether it's going to generate a theory or you just use for background understanding, and then to test the theory, for example, to that later on, the whole research philosophy or approach theory development, and then to later on, how would you design the research, whether using interviews or questionnaires. Yeah, so there's alignment, coherence is very vital in the research. So for example, if you say my research is going to look into how effective it is by just looking into a few figures, maybe. So you may want to look into the organizational, output, for example, is that's the way how you want to look into the effectiveness. So you have to justify that. Okay, and sometimes there's no right or wrong in a research, but the way how you specify your purpose and the way how you explain the design of your research is the key. So this gives you the room. Research design is the process in the overall plan. So it gives you the room to explain and justify what you want to do, how you want to do it, and in order to achieve your research question. So having discussed above, it's important now for me to bring to you the ground rules for social research and guideline for good practice. So in the research design process, you have to consider your research topic has been clearly stated and with a clear purpose. So you can formulate into the appropriate aims, questions, or objectives, and then you know your research is, exploratory, explanatory, or descriptive, or evaluative, or combination of some of them, as we mentioned. And then it's related to some kind of theoretical underpinning or some literature can underpin or relate to your research. Yeah, it's important also the relevance is also related to some kind of a practical problems or relevant to your subject study or your future career plan in the business subject area. Okay, and the feasibility, it is feasible, it is, as we said, the SMART. Yeah, so measurable, realistic, and achievable. So they're feasible in terms of the time, in terms of the resources, your skill sets that you have. Okay, so the research approaches, as we mentioned, so later on as part of the design. So you know how you access the data, and then you consider the ethics related issues, and then you protect the participants, you are able to get the data, and then your objective as a researcher. Okay, and the design, so from now on you have to think about the alignment and coherency, as we've just mentioned. So you're clearly understood the philosophical underpinning and approaches for your research in relation to the big terms of mentioned ontology, epistemology, and research paradigm. And the methods, thinking ahead, so you have to think about, how would you collect the data for your research, whether you can collect the data, accurate data and reliable data within the given time and under the particular context of your research. Yeah, and then move on to later accountability, whether your research is accountable. Okay, and moving on to next, so look into the findings. So you have to think about whether your research can be generalized. So as we mentioned at the beginning when we talk about the knowledge, yes, not all the knowledge or research project or can be socially useful in a wider community, but a lot of the time, at least, you need to be able to explain a particular issue within a particular context, and hopefully it is still useful. Yeah, so your research also has to have a originality. So there's no point, as we mentioned, you do a research that has already been done millions of times by others. So there's always a little room or little gap that your research is going to address. Yeah, or could be from a different angle with different organizations or with different in the target population or within a different society or culture kind of thing. So there's always should be some kind of originality of your research. Okay, it doesn't have to be necessarily completely new where there's no literature, which is not good practice, but need to have some originality, so to make sure your research is able to contribute to the existing literature. Yeah, and always, so think about now, so think about ahead in the process of your research design, the proof. Yeah, no matter what your conclusion will be or whatever you want to use for your data collection or data analysis later on, so you have to have a proof. Yeah, so try to use the most appropriate tools or methods and then justified to ensure the data, the findings you collect for your research are reliable and credible. Okay, so it's important for you to understand all the themes in relation to the topic, the approach, design, methods, findings, so to follow the guidelines for good practice in the research project. Okay. Finally, I'd like to highlight the importance of research design with reference to the concept of reliability and validity of your research, which is known as the credibility of your research. Okay? Reliability refers to the consistency of your research findings, specifically with reference to the specific tools or techniques you've used to collect and analyze the data. So that means if you are using the same techniques tools in the process of data collection and analysis, it should have consistent findings if other researchers do the research in exactly the same way as you. If the findings conducted by another people is not consistent as yours, that means your research is not reliable, yeah, because you don't generate the consistent findings. So validity is not about consistency of findings, when you do research at different times or by different researchers using the same techniques. It is about whether the findings are really about what they appear to be about. So it is about kind of genuinity, I would consider, or the quality of your research, really. So whether what you want to find exactly, whether you have found is exactly the true reflection of what you're meant to find. Yeah. So if I use the next slide to explain to you, that will be clearer. So let me use this example for you to understand reliability and validity. So the example is measuring temperature of boiling water using 2 different thermometers. Okay, so the first thermometer, and then you test the water. You put the first thermometer in the boiling water, so every time it gives you the same reading, 85 degrees. Okay, so no matter when you put it, so as long as you use the same thermal, put in the same boiling water, and it gives you 85 degrees every time. So that means the results are consistent. Yeah, so that means it is a reliable reading. However, as we know, it may not be valid because, the boiling water, it could be around 100 degrees. Okay, so 85 degrees as read by this thermometer might not be valid, but it is reliable because it gives you the same reading every time you put it in it. And then now if you use the thermometer 2, put in the boiling water, so every time it might come up with a different, slightly different reading. It could be 95 or 97 or 100 or 102 or could be 100. So they are not as consistent. Okay, so they may not be as reliable as the first thermal, but this thermometer the reading is valid. Okay, so that means you are using the right tool to collect the valid data, which may not necessarily be reliable. So therefore, it's important for you to note that tests are valid are likely to be reliable, but the tests are reliable may not always be valid. Okay, so that's why when you think about the way how you want to execute or conduct your research, you have to think about the validity and reliability of the research. Yeah, think about the tools you're going to use for your data collection and analysis, which is part of your research proposal. So reliability and validity is the key to consider. Okay. So I hope the above gives you an idea about what research design is and the importance of research design in the whole research process. And then next presentation, we're going into the specific design of a research, the specific strategies of research design in relation to the time horizon of your research, and with reference to Saunders Onion. Hope the above presentation helps. And then to finish this presentation, I'd like to highlight the importance to engage with this module. Yeah, so every week you're expected to do your weekly reading, to listen to the recorded lectures, and also make the lecture slides available to you if ever you need the slides. And then you need to prepare the case studies, read the case study, look into the answers, so to be discussed with your tutors. So the case studies are related to the particular week's topics we're discussing. Yeah, and it helps you to understand and make sense of how this topic is related. And because you also need to refer this case study in your reflective essay later. Okay, and then next, there's another of your tutorials where you are going to discuss your own research topic. So hopefully you can work on your research project or your own research, week by week. If this week, for example, we talk about research design, and you start thinking about your research design. Yeah, last week we talked about research philosophy. You start considering what the philosophy of your research. Okay, so I hope you can work along the weekly schedule on your own research topic. And as we said before, so you are an independent researcher. Okay, research project is independent. So you have to be self-motivated. You have to engage. You have to keep up. Okay, so you always have your module leaders and tutors here to help. And then you also have your A/B tutors every week and the case support on dissertation drop-ins. Online libraries is always a good starting point for you to find the relevant literature and start your literature review and background reading as well. Okay, so if you struggle to find any kind of information, module related information or StudyNet related information, please use the StudyNet technology support. Okay, so I hope that helps. Thank you.